everyone. I'm Kathleen Francis with the Sedona Daily Planet, and we're here to interview today one of the mayoral candidates, Scott Jablow. So we want to find out what his whole campaign is going to present to us. Scott, welcome.
Thank you very much, Kathleen. I appreciate being here.
Oh, and we definitely want to know, why do you feel you're qualified to become the mayor?
Well, to start with, I have at least 40 plus years of community service that I've been giving back to my community, and that started with as a police officer for 31 years back in New York, and I was also a community leader for 20 of those years, taking care of my community. And I learned really how to work with people, what it takes to network, and to me, that's the only way to get things done. It can't be one person's way. It has to be other people's opinions in the mix.
Beautiful. Well, with that said, how long have you been in Sedona itself?
I'm in Sedona 12 years. I came here immediately. The day after I retired, I came to Sedona in 2010. So I've owned property, and my wife lived here for 3.5 years before that.
Wow. Okay. So what is your background in the political scene right now?
Well, currently I'm the vice mayor. Prior to that, I was a council member for 8 years total. And prior to that, I was on the Planning and Zoning Commission and various other committees in the city. I was also elected to the Sedona Fire District Governing Board, where I helped spearhead a lot of good projects, such as the firehouse in the Chapel neighborhood.
Beautiful. Now, are you running as a Democrat or Republican?
It's a nonpartisan race, and which is very unique. Once you go into the county supervisors, it becomes partisan. But what I really enjoy about my career here in Sedona, for the past 8 years, I've worked with Republicans and Democrats on the state and county level. So it really doesn't play into what I believe in, and it's more about who can get the job done to do the best things for Sedona. And we have a lot of challenges, and these partners that I've been with have been really helping to get me where I want to go.
That's beautiful. Now, everyone wants to know, where does your funding come from? So that's always an issue, and a little bit sometimes touchy to ask.
No, not at all. I'm very proud of the fact that I would say 99% comes from people who live in Sedona. I have one or two family friends that have contributed a minor amount, but all of my money comes local. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, most of the money are from retirees. And then professionals. I have artists, I have doctors, but all people who are local here. To me, that's important because I represent them.
Beautiful. So there aren't going to be favors handed out to those big ticket checks that come in?
No, absolutely not.
Now, you know, one of the things that's really an issue for the residents that are so beloved our beautiful Sedona, there's overcrowding, there's noise, there is pollution, there's traffic, more hotels, larger Sedona airport, convention center at the airport. These are all things that seem to be on the table to consider. And what's your position about these kinds of things?
Well, let's take them one by one.
Okay.
You asked me a lot of great questions that I work with all the time, and people ask me things. So as far as the airport is self-governing. They are overseen by the county. It's county land. It's not part of the city. And then they're, again, overseen by the Federal Aviation Administration. They have to meet those guidelines. So a lot of the things that the airport needs to do are things that benefit the aviation industry. They have to have a restaurant to feed pilots and passengers. They have to have a hotel in case the pilots or passengers need to stop overnight. And they have them. They're wanting to put in an event venue solely for the fact that, and this is a 6,000 square foot event venue, plus an additional, I think, 5,000 outside. But that's the benefit to the airport for their funding to expand the airport. And what they want to do is build more hangars. And that would bring more planes into the community. That's not necessarily a bad thing, because what I found is some of the people who come in by the airport spend the most amount of money on the biggest item that I love, artwork. We have found that the people who appreciate art will fly in. They're more affluent, so they can afford to do that. But I really want to push more business to our artists in our art community. So that's really critical to me. And a lot of things I'm doing will help the art community as well going into the future. So the next thing on your list was
Well, speaking of which, at another meeting that we were part of, there was a very strong opinion about the new parking garage that is in the stages of development. So what would you say to our contingency about that?
well, there's a lot of information, and I don't want to say misinformation, but not full disclosure on a lot of the information that's being put out. Some people are thinking that this is a brand new project, and in fact, it's been going on for at least 5 to 6 years. And I just for another topic, I had to pull an old agenda item from a council meeting back in 2005. And even back then, they were talking about a parking garage and where it would be. And it's in the exact same, well, across the street from the exact same spot. See, this is commercial property. And Uptown is vital. We receive millions of dollars of tax money. And I'll get to the tax money, why it's so important in a minute. But we have small shops in Uptown. We have to realize that we are a tourist town. And these are tourist shops. Many of these owners have come here, retired, and invested their life savings into their shops. To not have parking for them would be hurting them. We need a healthy city. We need residents first. I understand that, and I totally get that. But we need our shops, all the shops in West Sedona and Uptown. More importantly, or as importantly, we need students in our schools. And a lot of things we're going to discuss in a minute will tell you how I'm going to be trying to bring more families here and to put children in our workforce housing and in our schools, and hopefully they'll stay long enough to come in an elementary school and graduate in high school.
Now, so often there is a push between the residents who came here to enjoy the beauty, and yet the businesses that you talked about, the small businesses. I am one of those business owners in Cottonwood. I have had people come into my shop and complain that they got a ticket that was so inappropriate from the Uptown area parking because it wasn't distinguished in such a way that they even knew where they were supposed to park. And suddenly they have a ticket. That does create a bad taste. And people go home and they talk about their experience here. And I think the objective surely should be that we want people to go back with a wonderful experience.
For sure.
And this delicate balance that we're trying to create here between over-commercialization and retaining the beauty of our land is a challenge that we all face.
Oh, I agree. I really couldn't agree more, actually. But over-commercialization would commit to people that we're bringing more commercialization here. I'm talking in Uptown, there's no way to expand, or very little ways to expand Uptown. This is our core retail community, okay? It was here before most of us ever even came to be in Sedona. I know when I came as a tourist, I stayed near Roy Robley, Best Western in Uptown. All those shops were there, as a city council. I'm not trying to bring more shops. It's all private property. I do know that the property owners are trying to fill vacancies, but we're not trying to, encourage more shops. But I don't want to see vacancies here. So, for people who, receive a parking ticket, I think it's pretty well signed and marked, and I feel bad if someone receives a ticket, but we have a court. They can go to court and say,
Of course, it was a tourist. This was a tourist.
Well, no, and they can do that. And actually, I do receive emails from people and tourists who received tickets from across the country, telling me how sad it was. Said, usually they park in a handicap spot, and I would tell them, you wouldn't park in a handicap spot in your town. Why would you park in a handicap spot in our city? It's no different.
Well, basically, if you're saying the parking, is it a two-story?
The parking garage is a different element, okay?
And does it take a certain footprint that would already be something that is for parking?
No.
I know there was a lot of resistance.
And I understand that. People are resistant to change. The only problem I have with the parking lot is it's expensive right now. And everything, all building material is expensive right now. But when it was proposed back in 2005, if we built it then, it would be pennies on a dollar that we have now. Unfortunately, we have a parking issue. we have 4 surface lots that are scattered out throughout uptown in residential neighborhoods, most of them. They're all going to go away, and that's not being told to a lot of people. They're going away. They're going to, right now, we're renting from the property owner, sometimes, or in this case, it's Red Rock News, Sinagua Plaza, I believe, the Sedona Fire District, their parking lot. We rented it. We pay minimal amount, but we resurface them more. We improve them more. And we've had that for a number of years. But in order for people to get to those parking lots, you need to drive in all different directions through residential neighborhoods. That causes traffic, and I'm really concerned about emergency evacuation. Okay, and if we want to have people get in and out in an emergency in a community that, God forbid, we never have it, but we could have a forest fire. We had it a number of years ago. We need a way that people can get out safely. So by using all these lots, it causes more of a problem in the backup.
I see.
So, and there's recently somebody took a photo of one of our existing parking lots and said, "See, the lot's empty." On that one day, on that 1 hour, we've done, studies where, when it's the height of the tourism time, those lots are full. But all those lots would go away. And there's also an issue with traffic. I'm sure you'd be shocked to hear that.
Yes.
And we're going to get to that a little bit more, but this touches on the reason for the parking garage. Okay. Northbound 89A has very few parking spaces. The southbound side it's filled with parking spaces, and they're all metered. But the northbound side causes a lot of friction traffic. So what we need to do, we find, is the parking spaces will have to go. There's only, like I said, 8 or 10 parking spaces, which is not a lot. And the business owners there realize that they're causing a problem. We need a second lane to go northbound. So again, we're going to be eliminating parking spaces. And for the most part, I think if council decides, it's a council decision, we would be eliminating, for every parking space we eliminate, we would be creating another parking space in the garage. The garage would also be solar. The garage would also have electric charging stations, not for all of them or all the spaces, but a good number of them. This is a positive thing in a commercial district. We have people, I love that Sedona is so passionate. That's why I enjoy being on city council. But when we have people who are on the other end of the city saying, "I don't want a parking garage."
It's good.
Okay. But they don't live there, but yet we have employees of some of the hotels parking on the neighbors' streets. We need to get them off the streets.
I'm back with Scott Jablow, who is running for mayor, and we have some issues that we want to explore a little deeper. So Scott, in the break we were talking about the traffic issues and the consequences.
Right. Well, we talked about emergency evacuation. That's one of the issues with traffic. And that's really important to me. That's something that I propose to council, and we move forward with expanding on our emergency evacuation plan. What residents weren't aware of is that the emergency evacuation of the city is handled by both of our counties, Yavapai and Coconino. They have emergency evacuation preparedness people. They have FEMA people. They have the resources to get on the phone and call and get whatever it is they would need from even across the country if we have an emergency, if we have a fire here. It wasn't something the city handled. It was something we relinquished to them. However, we still felt that we're in a bad situation of people not knowing where to go, how to go, and that's why we're doing a study on exactly how to evacuate our city so people will know on their neighborhood for a flood, say, okay, in Uptown they could have flooding. What would they do? If there's a fire, what would they do? Each section of town would have a different plan. So if we have traffic in our town and we don't mitigate the traffic properly, it could cause a problem. Although if we have a fire, I tend to think nobody's going to come to visit that day. So
that tends to be true.
Right, but we need to work together, and I really believe in communication and having our residents aware of what is expected of them and where they need to go.
Well, what ties right into that is the medical emergencies and the medical situation.
Oh, yes.
The quality of the medical and a medical emergency is another issue that I know a lot of residents have a concern for.
Well, recently, the Northern Arizona Healthcare CEO came to address the city council. And she spoke about changes that were going to be made here in the Verde Valley. downgrading the Cottonwood Hospital and looking at still in the future closing the emergency room or changing the status of the emergency room. And the information they gave wasn't clear to us, but downgrading our hospital is a big concern to me. So I've elevated healthcare in the Verde Valley to number one priority of my campaign and moving forward. While traffic is a problem, housing is a problem, children, they're all important. But if we don't have healthcare, who would want to stay here? And it's really about the residents. So I have now, we found out recently that the CEO that presented to council is no longer with the hospital. There's an interim CEO taking over who I have now established a relationship with. I've also established relationships with other doctors in our community and in Cottonwood. And what I want to do is look over an overall look of all the cities and towns coming together and doing an assessment of our medical services. What are we lacking? Because I don't know if Northern Arizona really wants to give us as much care as they give to Flagstaff. They want to spend close to $1 billion rebuilding Flagstaff Hospital, a brand new hospital, which will actually be closer. And that's fine. That's perfectly fine. However, we shouldn't lose services. So I've now had during the discussions with the interim CEO, they're going to build their hospital in Flagstaff. There's not a question. There's a need. It was explained to me in detail why. There's definitely a need. But he is now looking at investing millions of dollars back into the Cottonwood Hospital, not downgrading the services there, and to the foreseeable future, keeping the emergency room in Sedona.
I think that's critical for residents to know because so many of our residents are retired.
Exactly.
And they are very dependent on those services.
Exactly.
Now, another major issue that has been really important is the matter of water. How are you looking to handle that? Because, Sedona doesn't have its own well.
You're absolutely right. Well, there's two types of water. There's groundwater, surface water and groundwater. Okay, we receive our water from the ground through aquifers. And we don't control our water because we have Arizona Water Company and Oak Creek Water Company. They are our water district, if you want to call it, for lack of a better word. And before we do any kind of construction, before anything is approved, depending on which water company is in their area, they would either sign off on it or not. They have to agree that there's 100 years worth of water for that project. Now, I'm really concerned in general when we know that we have groundwater, and I'm told that we're in a good shape because the groundwater goes down and we're one of the top cities that receives groundwater, but no one's looking at our sister cities. We're not looking at Cottonwood, Camp Verde. How is their water? We need to be really, really cognizant of that and focus on that. And that's why there were two areas where we were looking at hotels, and we've changed the zoning, and it's a community plan that we were giving community focus area, where we were originally, it was created years ago, we allowed hotels. We are no longer having hotels there because that's a big business. And I'm not against big business, I'm just against businesses that may use water, but I'm against, we don't need any more hotels here. And with the influx of short-term rentals, we have an additional 3,000 rooms of considered hotel rooms, and which is more than hotel rooms that we have here. So we don't need more of that. And we certainly don't need things that are going to use up our resources. So I'm concerned about that.
And that's a wonderful perspective, and I think one that people are very happy to know that your focus on that is so critical. It's one of the biggest issues, I think, in our area, for sure.
And just to cap up on that, we have a sustainability staff. And I just found out yesterday that they are going to be focusing on water moving forward as one of their tasks. That they decided that how important water is here, and even though our wastewater treatment plant sprays water through water cannons back into the ground, which goes into the aquifers, we need to see what we can do to save more water.
Yeah, and of course it's difficult because people who are developers, we have hotels and we have the timeshares and so on. And when they come to invest in the community, of course, much of that revenue does go into the coffers of the city.
Yes.
So it's a struggle.
Yes.
It's a definite struggle that persists, and that battle between maintaining the beauty that's here and the development that is inevitable is something that requires a great deal of compassion and understanding on both sides.
Right. But it's also, compassion and understanding, you get that through education. And we're learning more and more. And that's why when I heard that our staff is going to be tasked with that and other sustainable measures that we could do, I'm really proud of that. I mean, taking water usage to a small level, I fail to understand why restaurants just continue to give you a glass of water when you don't ask for it. Right?
Very good
And I always say, please give me a cup of coffee. I appreciate that. But save the water for somebody else. I'm not going to be drinking water right now. But they continue to do it. And we're told by the state that we can't regulate and create an ordinance requiring businesses to do that. To put up a sign that says,
if you want water, ask for it.
And they could do it voluntarily, and there's been no acceptance of that.
Yeah,
So I want to be able to push that.
Well, it's all about raising people's consciousness, and that is done through education.
Education is key.
So, with that, what makes your campaign and your position and your drive to be improving the Sedona residents and the Sedona in its whole, why are you a better candidate than the other?
Well, let's go back to my history a little bit. I moved here because I wanted to be here. I bought a house here. I have roots, and I brought my family. I have 2 adult sons. They, in the beginning, lived with me, and then one son has a house that I co-share with him in Cottonwood. So he has roots in Cottonwood. We actually rent out 3 bedrooms in his house to workers in the community. So that's another way that we give back. My son wants to give back. But we have roots. It's interesting that people will come here, they don't own, and they have an opinion. They don't have roots here. And until they build those roots, they should, sit back and watch for a bit and see what we're doing instead of jumping into and having opinions. Every project that I do, I outreach. I do something that's very unique, and I'm told nobody does it, although I learned about it in my experience back east. I have a home phone, which I was criticized for actually having a home phone, cordless, but nonetheless it's a home phone, where people have been calling me for 8 years. Because we don't have an office. The mayor has an office, but the council people don't have their own phone lines in City Hall. But I want to be able to be contacted. And to me, 8 years worth of phone calls coming in, and if somebody emails me, that's only giving me part of the issue. I want to hear more of the story. And I did a quick survey of one of the meet and greets one time, and almost the entire room raised their hand when I asked, did you ever call me at home? And it was good to see. But I do my kind of outreach. The city staff does their outreach. We do surveys for almost everything we do. And even the parking garage, there was surveys done by the business owners. It's for them. They gave us outreach. It's not done in a silo. We don't make our own opinions when we do projects. So by having outreach and networking with partners, I have state level partners, I have county level partners, I have city level partners, and working together in building these relationships has given me 8 years to build those relationships.
Thank you. I think you presented a wonderful ability for people to understand your campaign and why you feel you would make the best mayor of Sedona. Thanks for watching, and see us again.
Thank you.
Is the disparaging opinions about Airbnbs. What's your position?
Well, we have several different types of Airbnbs. Either one are a deficit to our city. And I understand the original concept was for one of the property owners to rent out a bedroom and to make extra money. And that was fine. I totally get that. I would support that. Instead, and this, by the way, this was state mandated. This is not through the city or town of any city or town in the state. This is forced upon us, bipartisan, both sides, pushed us through without even doing any kind of discussion with cities and towns. And they did not allow cities and towns to even regulate them. But they were supposed to be a way for people to make money, a little bit extra, okay, to make ends meet. Instead, we have residents who are legally buying many houses,
Correct.
but they're local, and they do keep a good, reign on those houses. But the most offensive are the corporate people who come into our town, and they buy up every house they can get their hands on, sometimes as much as $50,000 over asking price to get that house in their inventory. They're not around. They may hire a property manager. It doesn't always go well. But with all these houses, and we're at 16% of our inventory, which is frightening. We're losing workforce housing,
Yes.
and we're losing the reasons maybe you, definitely I came here to retire, to live out the rest of my life here, to enjoy our city. Many people can't do that anymore. So we have a problem with that. We have been trying to change state legislation. I've been a fighting force for that. I've actually testified twice down to our state legislature to have them give back all control to cities and towns. Well, we won't have a cap in place unless they give us the cap. We'll be able to manage with better restrictions. They're hotels, but yet they're not designed as hotels. They're supposed to.
That's right.
Right? There are some reports of people, the property owners, putting 7 to 10 people in one bedroom. They just have cots, and if we can't change it, it's shocking because we have to treat them as homes, as residential property, and they're not. They're businesses. Businesses don't come into residential neighborhoods. They're not zoned for it. Now, one thing that I did, I pushed very hard for and was successful on city council, was to hire a lobbyist to work for us. All cities and towns in the state work with the League of Cities and Towns, who represent all 91 of us, all 91 cities and towns. But it's hard for them to represent one city. So we hired our own. It was something that was not agreed upon with some of the other council members, but we were successful on the vote. We hired the lobbyist. We've now had him for a year. He's been not totally successful in general grand scheme of things, but for the first year, I think he's been very successful. We actually had one law passed, 1168, which is going to give us a grouping of small little changes that we can require people to do to make the houses safe.
Excellent.
And now we also want to do, which will lead into the next question, we're also going to use the same lobbyist to help on my pet peeve project, which is the OHV problem. We're going to charge, as soon as the council votes for it, we're going to charge the next step for our lobbyist to take on the second task of working for state regulation change on OHVs. Now, I have also...
And why don't you explain what does that OHV stand for?
Well, off-highway vehicle. And for what they are, they're quad vehicles that 2 or 4 people can ride in. Unfortunately, they go into our forest and they rip the forest up.
Oh.
Okay, they cause noise and they cause dust. They're killing plants through the forest. 525 area, there's many videos you can see. Trees are dying. Okay, because they don't.
The land itself is damaged.
The land itself is damaged. It's scarred.
Yes.
But the trees are covered with silt. And trees, as everybody knows, if you took your science course, you know photosynthesis with a New York accent. But photosynthesis, they need the sunlight to thrive. They're not getting sunlight. They're dying. Now, this year we had a lot of rain for the first time in maybe 7 years. It's still not enough to wash off those trees because the dirt and silt has just caked on each, and they're dying. So what I did, I worked with, I am in the process of working with our state legislature. He's actually a representative who's in Prescott, and I went to him with the problems that we're having. And he said, well, there has to be more than just a Forest Service. I said, well, there's problems on the roads. These are vehicles that are registered by Arizona State as motorcycles.
Wow.
They're not motorcycles. Everybody knows the difference. But yet, OHVs are louder in most cases. They don't have direction signals in most cases. They don't have airbags. And they don't have rear bumpers. So if you ever drove behind an OHV and you, God forbid, hit one, you would normally have two bumpers that are made, they're totally aligned, they're made to take a hit, you do less damage to your car. There's no bumper on the back of an OHV. It doesn't belong on a state highway.
Wow.
And what's interesting enough, Arizona is one of only 8 states in the country that allows them on state highways.
Wow.
Every
Those
other
are
state.
all critically important points you're making.
Exactly. So I've been working with people. I've been networking with people. I've been working with a Yavapai County supervisor on this. I've been working with everybody that will listen, and there are now a lot of people working with me and listening. And I went this past year to the League of Cities and Towns because this is how cities and towns get state legislation changed. We go to the League to put forth ideas. And I brought them the same information. They said, this is interesting. Come and testify before a committee. I did that this past summer. They are now moving it forward to state, and I am going to testify the last week in October to the state subcommittee on traffic and talk about how important it is we get these off our roads. Now, unfortunately, it won't get them out of our forests because the Forest Service allows them in the forest. But they will then have to create parking lots where the OHV companies will trailer them, like many of the other states, trailer them from point A to point B. They won't be on our roads anymore, and it'll make it a little bit more challenging. I've recently seen documentation that tells me that the OHV companies in the United States are focused on Sedona to make it an OHV capital for them.
Wow.
That's why down in Phoenix, you won't see advertising. We didn't get into much advertising on destination marketing or anything like that here. But OHV companies have big billboards showing OHVs and come to Sedona and drive one.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And they incentivize it by changing the OHVs in the actual vehicles every 30 to 60 days in our city. So they always have new ones because they want you to buy them. The ultimate goal is to buy them. And that's fine. It's free enterprise. Everybody can, everything that people are doing illegal except riding on the roads. I don't have a liking for that.
Now the traffic that around Tlaquepaque is another little.
That's another thing. Yes.
Yes. So is that something that you're putting attention on?
Absolutely. It's just taken a long time because while people are fed up with it, I drive through that traffic every day during the high tourist season. And we are a tourist town, so we have to understand we do have to encounter tourists, and we all came here as tourists. But I drive in that traffic. But 179 is a state highway. It's not a city highway. It's not a city road. And we can make suggestions if we want changes. We pay for it. The state does the repairs, or they do the change. We have been trying to eliminate the crosswalk at Tlaquepaque. But it's not so simple. There's other things causing the traffic. It's just the worst issue. The worst bottleneck, thank you, is the crosswalk. But we have the Schnebly Hill roundabout. People realize until they do it, when you come out of Tlaquepaque, if you want to go to West Sedona, you have to come out of Tlaquepaque, make a right turn, go through the roundabout to go left.
Yes, very poor planning. I had a shop there on the other side, and it was a nightmare.
It was a nightmare. So ADOT allowed this to take place because Tlaquepaque is a commercial business. What they did was totally legal. They had a commercial building that they were proposing. You can't turn around and say no. It's a property rights state. You can't just tell someone, no, you can't build, but you have a right to do. So it was up to ADOT to make a change or to put requirements on Tlaquepaque, and they chose not to. So now it's left to us to mitigate this. So we want to change how traffic exits out of Tlaquepaque and then see, do we need the crosswalk? We want to change off of Ranger Road. People come out and there's no merge lane. That causes a backup. So we want to work with that. We want to do those first before we do really pushed for the elimination of the crosswalk. But ultimately, there needs to be a change. So what we've come up with is a very expensive underpass that would go underneath the trestle at by the Schnebly Hill roundabout.
You have so much to address and so much to
Right.
handle. How many hours a week do you work?
Well, you don't have to work. I tend to work, close to 40 hours a week.
And what do you get paid for that on city council?
$500 a month.
You're just getting too
Oh,
darn much money.
Well, that's why I want to be mayor. I'll get a $200 raise.
Oh,
So, but I don't do it for the money. I do it because I love this city. I moved here because I love this city. But there's been so many things thrown at us that are not our responsibility. Okay, traffic, we have to always deal with traffic. It's always been a problem. We have to eliminate those pinch points. But we have a Sedona in Motion plan. It's a 10-year plan. We're halfway through it, and we're eliminating a lot of the pinch points. Take, for instance, the southbound travel lane in Uptown. We eliminated 45 minutes of travel time out of the canyon by adding a second lane to 89A, which is, by the way, the only part of 89A that's ours. We own Uptown. But we did that. It has a center median. People aren't thrilled about it. I don't think it looks all that pretty. But we had people jaywalking constantly, causing a tie-up. We eliminated that static problem. So now, to eliminate 45 minutes of a drive time during high traffic time and not have the people in the canyon have a safety issue. Remember we talked about fires before? That was a huge problem. It's now safer to drive out of the canyon. But all these issues, I work on them constantly all week long, and actually I do it 7 days a week. Because on my Saturdays and Sundays, I'm talking to people and engaging with residents.
of course. Well, your wonderful enthusiasm and your dedication to service is obvious, and we certainly thank you for this wonderful interview.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.